Hey guys, welcome back to the Deep Dive Machine Learning channel. This is Yagesh Bobre, the founder of Deep Dive. And today in this tutorial, we'll be covering Python programming. And this tutorial series is going to be 2-3 videos long for Python explicitly because we'll be covering all the Python fundamentals that you need to get started in the field of machine learning. Alright, so let's get this tutorial started. So why Python? See, Python is a high level language, so that means it has easy to understand syntax, and overall, it's one of the best languages that beginners start their programming journey with. Python has been gaining popularity in the last few years, and it has always been in the top of its charts in the recent years. And this is the most important point. Python has a wide variety of high-end libraries and support, which in turn generates a huge potential of applications in various fields like web development, game development, and most importantly for us, data science and machine learning. This is the point, but we are going to be learning Python for mainly machine learning, and this is important to note because you don't need an in-depth knowledge in Python as a programming language to get you started in machine learning. Of course, if you want to be a Python developer, you have to know advanced concepts. But in machine learning, even if you know just the basics, it's fine because you'll end up using these high-end library support, those external libraries which already have complex functions built for you, which will reduce your work, and you'll be able to implement the models pretty easily with just easy simple syntax. All right. And if you do require any advanced concept, I'll be making a separate videos about that, so you don't need to worry about anything. I'll be providing you with the entire content. And why Python is best for machine learning? Python is easy to use and easy to learn. It Because of the multiple library support, you can shorten your source code. So basically, in Python, shorter source code means that the overall number of lines of code you write is shorter in Python, because if you are implementing a in loop in Python and Java, you'll see that Java you have to write more lines of code, and in Python you have to write shorter lines of code. So it's pretty easy. And now, why is Python best for machine learning when there are languages like R? See, there you have other options instead of Python, but Python has its own advantages. Like, it is easy to learn and easy to understand. It has shorter source code. That means number of lines you need to write are less. And the most important is the libraries, the external functions, the external modules that you can import in your code. They have a high-end library support, and you can implement all kinds of complex functions with just a single line of code. So this is a very important point, and this is the one of the main reasons why Python is best for machine learning. And another thing is community support. So whenever you face an error or you don't know what to do next, you can always ask the Python community. That is, you can go on to Stack Overflow, or you can go on the GitHub, their GitHub channel, and you can ask your doubts. Don't be embarrassed, because there are a lot of guys who ask stupid questions, who ask very beginner level questions, and the community is very friendly and they will tell you the answer to each question. All right. So now, Jupyter Notebook. So you see, this whole interface that I am using is called Jupyter Notebooks, and this is very useful. And I would recommend you guys to start using Jupyter Notebooks and get a hang of it, because you can write markdown and code both in a single interface. See, this whole thing is a code, and I'm also writing this text which is known as which is in markdown syntax. See here, this is markdown syntax. So it's very easy to use, and you can visualize data, graphs, images, videos all in the same notebook. So it's very helpful, and it's one of the best ways to describe a project while also including the code and your implementation step by step. And also, many research papers are mostly using Jupyter notebooks to send their proposals and submissions. So yeah, you need to have a good handle on Jupyter notebooks. Now let's get started with the first topic: variables and data types. So Python has basically these four data types. integer, float, string, and Boolean. So integer by name is basically a number, right? And float is basically a decimal point number. String, I will define it with my own definition. Anything inside a single or double quotation. And Boolean is basically a true or false value. So true or false value. And in binary, it is represented by 0 or 1. Sorry, 1 or 0. So one means true and 0 means false. So that is how you can represent in binary, because machine only understands binary values, right? So true or false in binary means 1 or 0. So 1 means true and 0 means false. So these are the four data types that Python follows, and we'll be learning about them right now. So here we have, there are a lot of comments, right? So I'll just remove this. Here we go. So this is called variable assignment. So here we have a variable named a, and we are assigning this equal to sign. Unlike maths, here it is used to assign values. That is, it means that the 16 value, the 16 integer is being stored in a variable named a. It's that simple. Here the value named name in a single quotation, this is called a string, right? This is a string in Python. Basically anything under a single quotation or a double quotation is a string in Python. And if you want to define, like, instead of just a single word, if you want to write I am engaged with the whole sentence, then that is fine too. So anything inside quotation will be treated as string. So this is being assigned, this equal to means assigned to the variable named b. And similarly for this decimal number, we are assigning it to c. So that means we are storing this value in the variable named c, and this true value we are storing it in d. And this is very important to note that the true starts with a capital true. See, instead of this capital T, if I write a small t, then you see that it is not being highlighted. This means that the Python interpreter that we are using doesn't recognize what this is. So if I try to run this, it will show you an error like name true, this true that we wrote is not defined. So not defined means that the Python doesn't recognize this. So instead of this, if I write T, now it is highlighted. That means Python recognizes it as a keyword. So now, see, I have no error, right? Now also, Python provides this type function which gives you the data type of the input. So here, if I give this variable as an input, it will tell you that this is an integer, because as we know, a stores the value 16, which is an integer. So Python recognizes it as an integer and stores it as an integer. So now b, if we give it as an input, then this is the value, right? So it will give you a string. So now let's try and remove this quotation mark and see what happens. Now you'll get an error that invalid syntax. So basically you have to write quotations to define something like word, characters, and sentences, paragraphs, similar to that. So type of B was string, right? And then type of C has assigned a value of decimal, so it will give you a type of float. And now D, which is this true value, this will give you a Boolean, right? So that is called bool. Now instead of assigning like this, here we used a. Let's directly try to write the number. So type of 1. 1 is an integer, so it will give you the result integer. We write 1.0, then it will give you float. So this is important. Even 0.0, which has no value, will return you a float, right? And here, this is the important part. Let's erase rest of it. This type 3. So I have written an integer inside of a quotation mark. So let's see what answer it gives. So this gives you a string, right? So if we put integer inside of a quotation mark, now it is treated as string, as you can see, right? So anything inside a quotation mark, even integer values, the float values, the Boolean values, even those are treated just as string, right? Now let's discuss another function. Like type is an inbuilt function. Similarly, we have a print function in Python that is already defined, and its basic functionality is to output or to display to the monitor or or the output device basically. So you see, when I printed this string value, it gave that as a result on the screen, right? So this print function basically shows you whatever it's inside, whatever the input is, and it displays it on the screen. Now let's see how we can use the print statement more efficiently with variables, right? So here we have assigned Rajesh to the name variable, student to a job variable, reading to the hobby variable, and 12.000 to the age variable. Now we use print statement like this. My name is, we have these braces in the statement, and these braces need to be filled with these variable values, right? So we can write dot format, and now now we can use this dot format function to format each of these braces. So we write name, job, age, and hobby. These are the four variables, right? So name here will be assigned to the first brace, job will be assigned to the second braces, and similarly for both. So now let's try to execute this print statement, right? So for the second one, let's just comment it out. And this hashtag symbolizes comment. Comment means that basically you can write anything inside this, and this is a non-executable statement. That means this isn't a code. This is just something, some kind of text, or you make short notes, and you like to make short notes so that you remember what this was about. So this is some kind of short note that you can add to code, because in coding projects, in programming, you will need to write thousands and thousands of code, right? So you need to know which code is for what. So there you can just add a comment specifying that this function is for, I don't know, maybe just printing the output, or maybe something else, but that is what comments are used for, and they're pretty handy despite like they may not seem to, but they are pretty important. So now let's try to execute. So what seems to be the error here is, oh, all right, I forgot to add age. Now let's see, this statement is printed out, my name is Rajesh. So instead of bracket, this name variable, the value of name variable got printed. So my name is Rajesh, I am a the student got printed out from job. Currently, I am this. Age got printed out instead of this bracket. And I like reading. This got printed out. Hobby got printed out instead of the bracket. So this is what happens when you use braces and you use the format function, right? And one important thing to note is what is this syntax? Colon dot to f. And here, let's notice this. Age here had 4 decimal points, but here it only printed out 2. So this has something to do with decimal points that we can notice, right? So what this does, it is colon point. This suggests that after decimal point we only want two values. So this is what happens. So only two values. So if I do this to 3, then it will show 3 decimal values. If I put this 1, it will show 1 decimal value, right? So that this is very useful when you when you need to edit numerical values where you'll be getting large values. For example, pi is a irrational function, right? So it has unlimited, like after point values, it keeps on, like it is not an ending function, right? So it's an irrational number. So there you have to limit the number of values you show. So you will use this formatting statement if you want to show the value of pi or similar numbers. Now, here let's observe a problem. For example, if I just delete this name and delete this job and I exchange them. So what happens is now student is getting printed instead of Rajesh, and Rajesh is getting printed here. So basically what we notice is you need to write the correct orders. For the first, you need to write it first if you want to assign the value. So let's just put it back. All right. So let's, what if we don't wanna follow that order? What can we do? So let's comment this out in the next statement. So next statement, what we do is in each braces we assign this name. So in this case, the first braces is named first. Pretty simple, I know, but yeah, let's keep it simple. Second braces is named second, and the third bracket is named third. So you can now directly assign the first variable the value of name. So name here has Rajesh. So this first bracket, which is the name for the first bracket, will be assigned name, right? So here, if we print it, it will print my name is Rajesh. I am a student. I like reading. So basically, first bracket is being assigned Rajesh, the second is being assigned student, and third is being assigned reading. Now, for example, let's try to exchange the value like we did last time and see what happens. So now if we do, it's still printing the same because now order doesn't matter as long as we specify the which bracket we are assigning into. So this is pretty important, or you can use it according to the situation, but yeah, it can come pretty handful. Right, so let's comment it out and run them both together. So basically these are the two statements. Now let's jump on to the second topic, logic and Boolean statements. So we will cover logical and logical or, conditional statements, and loop. So start with logical and. So in English, you must have heard a statement like this, right? If this happens and this happens, then I will do that. So that kind of statement is and, right? So when one condition becomes true and another condition becomes true, then actually let's write it on the separate statement. Example, true and. If one condition becomes true and another also becomes true, then what we'll get is true. That means only if both of the conditions are satisfied, then only we will follow along with the next thing, right? What if one of the condition becomes false? Then we won't go ahead. So that means false. What if we do this and put this as false? That's basically the same thing, right? One is false, another condition is true. That means we won't go ahead with this thing because and means that both of them should be satisfied to go ahead. This will also give false. Now, what if we both of them become false? So, pretty expected, right? It would be false. So, this is what is written here. If so, let's print out everyone. So, for true and true, we'll get true. For true and false and true will get false, and false will get false. So basically, logical and operator suggest that both of the conditions should be satisfied for the following conditions to follow, right? And let's try to determine what logical or would do. So for true or false, for true or true. So when both of the conditions are satisfied, then it will probably result in true, right? Yeah, it's true. So in English language, when we use the word or, we say like, if you do this or you do that. So or means that it's fine even if you do only one thing, right? So what if I changed one condition? It's still true. That means even if just one condition is satisfied, then also you can follow along. So or is basically giving you an option. Either one of the condition being true, then you can follow along with the next conditions. So basically, this can be false and this can be true, and it will still give you true. So either one of the conditions are true, then you'll get the result as true. And if both of them are true, then obviously you'll get true. But what if both of them are false? So now, then it will give you false. So basically, it will give you true for all these three, but false only for the last when both of the conditions are not satisfied. So these are basically called the truth table for logical and illogical OR. There are different kinds of truth table, but we'll only be discussing these two. Now let's discuss some inbuilt function. Inbuilt functions are basically some functions, some methods that are already built into the Python library, Python language, Python environment, so that you can use them directly. So for example, let's actually comment both of these out. So we only print one at a time. So this name is a string, as you all know. Now we can use let's delete this and use something like this. Name, the string variable. Now dot is alpha. Sorry. Let's use this function. So this is how inbuilt function is used for string. So here our string, then dot, then our function name, and then braces. Now when we print it, it will result true. And we can only do this in Jupyter notebooks, and because in Jupyter notebooks the last value, the last function you write gets printed out. But if you were using environment, you need to write the whole print statement like this. So now let's use print statement too. So it will print out true. So what is happening? What happens is this is alpha statement. What it does is it checks whether the given string contains only alphabets. So here we see that Yagesh, this string is, that's my name, this only contains alphabets, right? Only characters, one capital and rest of them small. So yeah, that's why it returns true. But what if we add here a space? Now if we print it, it will give you false because now these are all alphabets now, but now this space is not an alphabet. So overall, the string contains something other than alphabet. So here, this function returns false. Now let's get started with some inbuilt functions for strings. We will discuss some functions like isAlpha, isNumeric, isSpace, and here isSpace. Then we'll also discuss the len function. There are many other functions which I think that you'll have to discover yourself when we use them. So let's directly get started because there are a lot of the functions, right? So we won't be able to cover entire everything, right? So let's just cover a few of them so that you know how it works. So let's only use the first one for now. So what it does is this isAlpha function. It tells you is the entire string made up of alphabets. So it basically asks you a question: is this entire string made up of alphabets? If the answer is yes, then it will return true. If the answer is no, then it will return false. Similarly for isNumeric, so it asks is the entire string a numeric value? If yes, then true. If no, then false. Similarly for space, if the entire string is just a space, the space bar thing, right? So all of these three functions return a Boolean value, that is true or false. There are also others like is capitalized, is uppercase, is lowercase, is title. There are many different functions that you will have to discover yourself if you want to, or probably you will get to know them as we do projects in later tutorials. Now another function is len function, which we use often in projects. It basically tells you the length of the string, that is the number of characters. It also counts special characters, alphabets, non-alphabets, numeric values, everything, right? So it returns a numeric value. Now let's try this name variable and give it a string Yagesh. Now when we print name dot is numeric, this is how we used. We first write the string variable, then dot, then is numeric. So is numeric checks whether the whole string is a number. Here we see that there is no number, right? It basically contains alphabets. So what it will return is false, just false. So you get that, right? Because there is no numerical values, it returns false. So let's comment this out and use this. So here it will check whether the string contains alphabets or not. So here we see that it contains only alphabets, so it should return true, right? And that's what it does. So it returns true for this. Now for the third one, we have to check name dot is space. That means, is the string a space string? Like, does it contain only space? The answer is false, right? Because it contains alphabets. So basically when we run it, here we see that it returns false, right? So what if we change this string and just write it as space? So when we run this, now it will return true because now the string only contains space value, right? So is space returns true. So that's how functions work in Python, and these are some of the inbuilt functions. Let's also see, like, string 1 is numeric and string 2 is your gauge with a space here, right? So if we write print, let's do one statement at a time. So string 1 dot is numeric. So is the whole string numeric? Yes, it is, right? So we should expect a true value. So yeah, it returns a true. Now if we write the second statement, string 2 is alpha. So is it alphabetical? Let's remove the space for now. Is it alpha? Yes, all of the values are alphabets, right? So it should return true. So yeah, both of the statements are true. Now what we do in the last is, let's comment this out for now. Actually, let it remain there. String 1 dot is numeric. We are using logical AND operator, right? So what did we study in logical AND operator? If both the conditions are true, then only it will return true, right? So both of this should be true to give you a result true. So we saw that string 1 is numeric was giving you true. Here we saw that, right? So it was giving true, and this is alpha was also giving true. So the AND operator should also return true, right? And that's what it does. It returns true. But what if I add a space here? Now, when it checks for alphabets, it will also give the space character, right? So this is alpha should return false value. So when we try to use a logical AND operator, there one condition is true, but it compares it with the second value that is false. So here, when we execute the statement, here we see true and a false value. So the logical AND operator gives you a false value because this condition now becomes false, right? So that's basically how you use logical operators with the functions. So time to conclude this tutorial. In the next one, we'll continue with the conditional statements and loops. Alright. So thank you guys. If you like the video, hit the like button and just subscribe to the channel for the whole machine learning course. Alright. See you guys next time.